What I like today, Anthony, is we're going to talk about two of my favorite things, booze and New York. What do you say to that?
I think you have a top one that you didn't talk about, but we'll talk about that another time.
Maybe on April 20th.
I'm Anthony. Welcome to No Vacancy Live. That's my friend Glenn.
You're watching the #1 show in hospitality.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to No Vacancy Live. Thanks so much for joining us on the #1 hospitality industry podcast. That's Anthony Melchiori. I'm Glenn Hausman. We love that you're taking your time to spend with us. Anthony, how are you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing well, my friend. How are you? I'm going to see you at Hunter. When are you going to Hunter?
I'm going to go there on Monday. Your sound does not sound good again.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. That's rough.
Do your thing and I'll do my thing.
Yeah. Meanwhile, we'll be at the Hunter Hotel Investment Conference, as Anthony was saying. So while we won't be running any long-form new episodes next week, I'll be grabbing a lot of content, short-form interviews with a lot of the players that are going to be there. Come see me on Wednesday at 11 o'clock downstairs, where I'm going to be hosting a panel with top four of the top franchise chief development officers in our business. Of course, I'm talking about Julian Smith of IHG, Noah Silverman of Marriott, Jim Tierney of Hyatt, and I also think I got Chip Olson of Wyndham on that panel. So that should be a whole lot of fun. Anthony, you got that figured out?
Does that sound better?
Yeah, it sounds much better. And perfect timing, because I got a story that I want to share with you before we get to our great guests today. So, in Las Vegas, Anthony, there was this parcel of land owned by the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, and it was originally supposed to be sold, and the deal fell apart and all of that. But the new owners of it are developers Brett Torino of Las Vegas and New York's Paul Canavos, who teamed up to buy the parcel. But the interesting news is that's part of Flag. That's the Daisy, who owns the property, the Ritz-Carlton in New York City and all those Miami properties.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with that. They're talking about a non-gaming hotel. I'm thinking next to the Fontainebleau, other side convention center, Ritz-Carlton might be coming over there. But that's just me speculating.
But would it be a casino?
No, non-gaming.
Non-gaming, that property has to be non-gaming?
It does not have to be. However, that seems to be what the plan is.
It's a great location for me to have a non-gaming luxury hotel because there's gaming everywhere else.
Yeah, exactly. So Torino and Canavos, of course, the chairman and CEO of Flag Luxury, teamed up more than a decade ago to develop a 3-story retail complex in Vegas. That was called Harmon Corner. It has the Bubba Gump Shrimp, Sugar Factory, and all of that kind of stuff. So they've actively been doing some of this stuff. So I look forward to seeing what's going to happen over there.
I'm excited. They're really, really good operators.
Yeah, I am too. So that'll be pretty cool. But being that they have the Ritz-Carlton New York, I thought it'd be a great bridge to bring in our guest today. I'm talking about David Silverman, who happens to be with me on the board of the Long Island Hospitality Association and founder CEO of Grapes to Grains Beverage Consultants out of Long Island, New York City, and Joe Cozza, principal JVC Catering and Event Consulting. Now, both these guys have their own businesses, but Joe goes back to New York hospitality, working at Marriott's and Cipriani's, and David's been around doing sort of the same thing for years. So I thought it'd be fun to get everybody together and talk a little bit about where we are with beverages today, catering today, and reminisce a little bit about New York City's golden days, the olden days.
Hey,
So,
Justin, welcome.
Hey, everybody.
Hey.
So it's great to see you. So great place to start, I think, is the center of it all, Marriott Marquis. Joe, you worked over there. Anthony was in New York City at the same time. We all kind of know Mike Stengel. Joe, when did you first come around and start working in New York City hospitality business?
So prior to the Marquis, I was part of the pre-opening team at the Marquis in 1984.
Right.
Obviously, and then we opened in 85. But and I was there 22 years as the executive director of catering. Prior to that, I came onto the New York scene pre-opening for the Grand Hyatt.
Mm-hmm.
Which was one of the first new hotels. Well, it was a renovation, complete renovation, but one of the newer things that happened in the city in many, many years.
Yeah.
So if you wouldn't mind, can you share all the stories about the owner, please? Thank you.
Anthony, only if you share stories about the owner you worked for at the Plaza.
I got. We will different. You do one, I'll do one. But we have to do it in the green room.
Yeah, right.
But it was an exciting time to open a hotel in 1980. The city was in a very different place, and really trying to come back, and new things were happening. And then after we were open, and I was there about 4.5 years, I got an opportunity to open the Marquee, which was, a big project in the Times Square area.
At that time, there was no bigger project, period, for two reasons. One, because it's obviously just a big real estate investment with the Marriott brand, but more importantly, it put the stake in the ground of we're taking Times Square back. And I actually was pre-opening on the Embassy Suites right across from you. And without you guys, there would have been no hotel across the street.
100% correct, Anthony. It transformed Times Square.
I mean, despite a lot of obstacles, because, they had knocked down some theaters that were really in bad shape. And there was a lot of
Helen Hayes handcuff herself to the construction.
There was a lot of concern about putting that big hotel in at that time, but it turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to Times Square. I truly believe that.
It's the best thing that ever happened in New York. I mean, that's the reason ABC moved into Times Square, and you saw the backdrop of Times Square. It's the reason everybody now goes to Times Square. When people say downtown New York, everybody means Times Square, right? If you're inside New York, you know what we mean. We mean Soho. If you're outside, oh my God, downtown is beautiful, Times Square. So our downtown is gorgeous. I mean, the Red Steps was like carry-on stop. It's like saying we are here. And even during all the stuff that's going on now, with crime or your perception of how bad it is or isn't, Times Square is standing strong.
Yeah. Joe, hold that answer for 1 second. Anthony, your sound is horrible. It's unlistenable.
So take me out. Take me out.
You got it. Thanks. So go ahead, Joe. Sorry.
No, I was saying that was an amazing project to be part of. Both were, but the Marquee just really established such an identity, and with the amount of large space that we had, over 100,000 square feet and a 30,000 square foot ballroom, we were able to, attract large production type events and really give everyone another choice in a new property with a very, very high focus on food and beverage and service. That was really where we wanted to excel, and that was a big test for that property. And it was successful and continues to be successful.
For sure. David, you have any recollections of when that came around? And now David disappeared on us. There he is. David, you back?
I am. Sorry about that.
Do you have? No, it's all good. Do you have any recollections of what it was like back then when you saw New York starting to change with the construction of the Marriott Marquis?
Oh, absolutely. As a matter of fact, it's when I left the sales position. I was working for a small company. They went out of business, made some bad decisions. I went to work for the company that I've worked for 40. I've been in the business 47 years. I've worked with them for 40 years. At the time, it was Charmer Sales Company.
Yeah.
Charmer Sales Company. Charmer is an acronym. It stands for Charles Marinoff. He is the founding father. He goes back to days of Meyer Lansky.
Yeah.
The great grandfather. Anyway, they decided, somebody from Moet Hennessy, which was then Chef on Summers, that said, we want a hotel guy, and we want you to be that hotel guy. And I never sold a hotel in my life.
Right.
And all of a sudden, and it's a really funny story, because all of a sudden I said, well, I'm smart enough to know that I got to go see my biggest customer. And that's obviously the Marriott Marquis. And I don't know anything about this, but anyway, I go and I got to meet some guy, Ken, the beverage manager. I don't know. Go to the 8th floor and look for Ken.
And the 8th floor is the main lobby at the Marriott.
Right, exactly. And I go, Joe knows where I'm going to this, and I go and I'm walking and I'm like nervous. And all of a sudden I hear, David Silverman. And I turn around and I go, oh my God, Kenny Shahabian, what are you doing here? He goes, I'm the beverage manager. He said, you're my appointment. He owned this tiny little bar in Merrick. right near my home, Seaford rather, right near my hometown. And I just always serviced him as if he was a big customer. And he would call me on a Saturday night and say, "Can you do me a favor? I'm 3 deep at the bar. I need a dozen eggs and a quart of milk. Or I need this. I need a bottle of vodka," something. And I'd always, take the time to go do it. It was convenient. And I said, "So tell me what it's like to sell a hotel." And he goes, "Now when I call you, I won't call you for a bottle of triple sec or a bottle of vodka. I'll call you for 10 cases of vodka and 10 cases of triple sec." He said, "But I won't call you for milk and eggs." And it was no different. Just the numbers were changed. So,
Does it sound better now, Glenn, or no?
Yeah, it sounds better. Hopefully it'll stick. That's really funny, David. So you really had to figure things out pretty quickly there.
By the seat of my pants.
Yeah.
And then, meeting somebody like Joe Cozza just makes life easier.
Yeah. That's for sure. So it's funny because the more things change, the more they stay the same. The hotel industry is completely transformed from when all you gentlemen first came into the business. But also, today you still get thrown into the fire. It's just a different kind of fire out there. Joe, I got to ask you. I got to go back to that Grand Hyatt. I have this crazy memory that I'm not sure if it's real or not anymore, but you probably have an idea. In 1980, right after Ronald Reagan took office and the Iranian hostages were freed and they came to New York, I feel like they went to dinner at the Grand Hyatt Hotel before going to a Broadway show.
Ooh.
Do you have any recollection of that?
I honestly don't. That's an interesting memory.
It's just early memory I have. I was like 10 at the time, and so I don't know.
Glenn, you're having flashbacks.
Yeah, maybe to a previous life or something like that. That's for sure. Anthony, let's hear how you sound now, buddy.
Yeah, there's a lot of memories. I'm sure we all know all the players in New York. How's my sound?
Everything's great now.
The thing I love the most about the hotel business, and I learned quickly, Glenn, was that, and Anthony, that these people don't leave the hospitality industry. They just go to another state.
Right.
And they call you, and if you did good and you had a relationship, "Oh, does your company have a sister company here?" "Oh yeah, sure we do."
Yeah.
Well, I just showed somebody, a kid I'm mentoring, the loyalty and relationships in your brand is everything. There was one person we named nameless. I mentioned this person when I was out in Vegas to like 3 or 4 people, and I asked them, "Watch. I'm going to tell you how I feel about this person, and then I'm going to say, oh, so and so's here," and just watch their reaction. All 3 of them used the same word I used.
Oh.
Started with A and then with E.
Yeah.
There you go. Well,
your personal brand and your integrity in our industry is so critically important.
Yeah.
And you create. I always thought of a good leader as someone who creates leaders who create leaders. And that's a great part of the industry is developing careers and people and having them move on to bigger and better things.
Yeah, it sure is. I kind of feel the same way. When I was an adjunct professor at NYU and the Tisch School of Hospitality over there, it was great because I had all these young students, and now 15 years later, they're all in the industry and they're my peers, and we could all give each other support and help each other with our careers. It's kind of a fascinating thing.
It really is.
Yeah,
it is.
So how did you guys meet back at the Marquee and then just kind of form that lifelong relationship?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I was the pre-opening director catering, and I'm sure I met David very early on when we were at the opening stage, which that property took a while to open. We only opened with a couple of 100 rooms, and the rooftop didn't open almost a year later. But I met David early on, and we were developing our strategies for catering and how are we going to make a mark in New York. Coming in new with all the competition. There wasn't much non-hotel competition on the event side as there is now. It was pretty much, the big hotels, and that was our main competition. And we were developing our strategies, and David became, such a great partner in terms of, the education that he brought to our team and to me, and how can we help? And I used to use David as an example when I would do a sales meeting with my sales team and say, you want to talk about relationship building and trust, selling with a trust factor. here's the guy. I mean, this is what you want to do. So we hit it off, and we started having a lot of creative taste panels and product launches, and really taking banquet beverage at that time to a whole nother level, because it really was a great opportunity to do that. That was an area that was kind of hadn't changed much in decades. If you really think
we
about
did
it.
things. We were so ahead of our time that we were pairing cocktails and food, and I learned early on about partnership, and our suppliers and our company had money to spend to do events, because this is what we did. Well, let me be the one to bring the money to our customers, because they don't write checks to they write checks to our company. They don't write checks to Bacardi. They don't write checks to Absolute Vodka. They write checks to Charmer. So let me put the business in there, and we formed a great partnership. We had a need. They fulfilled the need. And I'll always marvel at the fact that every time we did these events, we invited all the people from the city. All the hotel people came, because when we did an event at the Marquee, you always saw the GM, the food and beverage director, and the chef walking together through the room, whispering like, "Why can't we do something like this? How did Cozza pull this stuff off? How do we do this?" No, and Glenn, it really was just so, just visionaries. And my company was like that. I worked for visionaries, and it just was an easy match to hook up with Joe, because we both fulfilled the need for each other.
And that's great. And it's so amazing when you could follow each other in your careers and could support each other decade after decade after decade. But while we wait for Anthony to come back to throw out some more of those good old stories, I'm curious as to where we are right now with the beverage business and how it relates to hospitality. Because David, I believe when I first joined the board a couple of years ago with the Long Island Hospitality Association, you were already starting to talk about different types of, drinks and beverages that were just debuting. And you were way ahead of that. So where are we right now with what hoteliers are looking for and what guests expect when it comes to a well-rounded beverage program?
So the guest expectation is very, very high. They're putting their money down. Prices have skyrocketed, obviously, for prices for cocktails and things. And, the lifeblood of our business in the wholesale wine and liquor business is new products. Line extensions. I mean, look at how many flavors Absolute Vodka has. Look at how many flavors Stolichnaya has. Pinnacle. I mean, just the list goes on and on and on and on. And they can't carry, obviously, all of them. So you really have to find the niche that works well for them. Okay. So, today in a mixology world, they don't want flavored vodkas. They want a base vodka, a good base vodka, and the bartender makes his own flavors.
Yes.
And he mixes it that way. So it's a premium cocktail. Listen, a lot of hotels are come out with corporate beverage programs. And, they're basically grabbing money from suppliers to have their brands featured on the back bar on a cocktail list, which will create velocity. And they always leave room for local decision making, for relationship building, and that's really where we kind of come in and really put these brands forward. And you have to pick the brand. You try to fit a square peg in a round hole today, it's not going to work. I'm working on this one brand right now, Glenn. It's called Chinola. It's a passion fruit liqueur from the Dominican Republic. I saw the very first bottle of Absolute Vodka in New York.
What?
We were exclusive with it at Knickerbocker Liquors, where I worked. Okay. I got on stage, introduced an Irish cream, and dressed up as a Irish milkmaid, and I milked the cow on a sales meeting stage. I mean, I've done everything. In my 47-year career, this is the greatest product I've ever worked with in my life. Wow. Passion fruit's such a hot category right now, a hot flavor. It's a modifier. It's not a main ingredient. But it makes the best margarita. My slogan.
It's so strange to me, David and Joe. I'd love for you to, pop in on this one as well. But if vodka is supposed to be base flavor, it's interesting how there's such strong branding behind all of that. And Absolute was definitely one of them with back, when we had magazines, all the creative ads that they would have month after month after month. And then when I was working in PR, I left journalism for a little while around 2004, 2005-ish, give or take. And vodka was really exploding to the fore at that point. Everybody was coming out with big brands, and it seemed to be making a difference. So do bartenders really care, Joe, for example, about all the different types of vodkas if they really are just serving as a background, or do they have to do it, I guess, because consumers demanding specific brands? How's that work?
Well, I think it depends on the type of bar or restaurant you're looking at. I mean, you go into certain, they'll have 50 different flavors, combinations, but I think when you get into a more sophisticated market, I think what David said is absolutely correct. And when I think about the catering side of it, because when you mentioned about where we are now, I think to David's point, their level of sophistication, their knowledge of brands and what they like and how they like it transfers over to catering. And I think if you don't mimic a more of an experiential bar concept in a catering event, you're going to miss out, because they see it when they go out for dinner, they see it when they're at a club, and then you go to a banquet or a catering event, and it's one vodka, one gin, one this, one of that, and maybe one white wine, one red wine, and you're lucky if there's 2 beers at the bar.
Right.
I mean, that is just a disaster. So really taking
Anthony, Anthony, you're back.
Yeah, well, let's see. How's my sound?
That sounds good right now. We'll see if it holds.
So, the biggest problem with that is the talent. I was just at an event and the talent was superb. So I had superb drinks, because when you're making those kind of drinks, the subtlety of what you don't put in a drink, or how you stir it or don't stir it, what kind of ice you use, is everything. So the training for that, and there's very few people in the market, and I'm not going to say in the country because there's a lot of them, but in each market that really knows how to do that, especially when you're doing it at high volume. Went to a speakeasy at the Resorts World, and I had a drink that was literally sublime. And I don't think I've ever used that word. It was just absolutely just unbelievable. Next level. I didn't care if it was $30 a drink, but the care and love you put into it. And that's really, I think, the challenge. It's not really having the mindset to do it, it's having the talent to do it.
Yeah, and don't try to attempt to do something that you can't execute, because I've been at functions and there's a line 30 deep because they're making a cocktail to order and it's impossible to execute that. So
so true.
One of the things that if it's done correctly, and I preface it as being done correctly, and David and I worked on this early on, was doing a high quality batch cocktail for large catering events, but it has to
funny
be
you
done.
should say that, because I've been noticing that a lot, Joe. Let me see if I'm right. So you choose a featured drink or 2 featured drinks, usually within the theme of whatever the event was, and then you can have like gallons of it up ahead, right, Joe?
That's correct.
Yeah, but it's got to be done right. You really have to pay attention to how it's being made. So to Anthony's point, the quality has to be there, but it can help with the execution, because you have to be realistic. If you have a cocktail party for 1,500 people, what's the reality of making a cocktail with 4 ingredients from scratch? It's not going to happen. No. A more intimate event, yes, absolutely. But the combination of that plus the variety of spirits, I think, is also something that catered events need to look at. Why are you just offering 1 scotch and 1 gin and 1? That doesn't really cost any more. You might have a little more inventory, but it doesn't really cost more to put some choices, because the client, the expectation is to have choices. Why is it 1 red and 1 white? I mean, people drink different types of wine.
That's true. Why are we saying red and white when there are a ton of different varietals just in each of those types?
Exactly. And again, based on your volume, do 3 and 3, do sparkling, do some variety, because the expectation is there. And you're going to make a difference.
Food and wine pairing, so important. Even for events, not to have the same wine throughout the entire dinner. It just doesn't work. And Joe was notorious for that course by course, painstakingly going through taste panels. I'll never forget going through it with Bette Midler Joe and George McNeil. And we were doing like the first Halloween event for New York Park restoration.
The New York restoration,
George was doing everything. Shellfish. And, I've got to pair wines with it. And Joe kept saying, he kept telling George, it's too much shellfish. Anyway, we go through the taste panel. Of course, I'm tasting wines comparatively with what the food is. And Bette Midler turns to me and she goes, "Don't you think we have a little too much trafe?" Joe was like, "See, I told you, George." But Joe was notorious for painstakingly go through course by course and pairing the right cocktail with the right food. Wine with the right food.
Well, David, you pointed out something. We would use taste panels, which really became quite popular with large galas, and you'd have the event planners there, and certainly weddings do taste panels. But we use the taste panel as an experiential and an educational piece for the client, i.e., we would try 3 whites, 3 reds, different varietals, explain to them. Some people were very knowledgeable. Some people really wanted to learn a little bit more, and then have the chef come in and do the same thing on the food side along with myself. So we really, and along the way, you would potentially upsell, and they potentially would go with a better quality wine. Because the other thing that always drives me crazy is you're going with a very expensive meal. You're doing a great fillet or a rack of lamb, and you've got an $8 bottle of wine. It just doesn't work.
No.
So,
especially at that level that you're trying to put out there. David, we were talking a few minutes ago about how we see, how I saw vodka is really popping. And it seems like every couple of years, there's a new spirit that everybody's focusing on. 2 summers ago, it seemed to be hard seltzers, right? Which followed right after the hard lemonades and all of that kind of stuff. But the last 2 years, I feel like it's all about tequila. Am I right about that?
And whiskey, absolutely.
And whiskey, yeah.
Fine tequila, tequilas. Brands like Clase Azul, probably the best tequila in the marketplace today. And it's funny, we did an event for Make-A-Wish the other night. I had Joe come as my guest, and I got 4 bottles of Clase Azul tequila, and we auctioned them off on a live auction. And the value of the bottles were $2,000. You can't get these brands; they went for $6,000, Glenn.
Wow.
Like for 4 bottles. It's crazy.
Wow. That's insane.
Fine tequilas and whiskeys are absolutely through the roof.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we got a question for you. Mr. Cozza is saying, David, what drink that a mixologist made for you blew you away?
Blew me away. The other night we did a Chinola drink. It was a tequila sunset. Chinola sunset, I should say. Yeah. It was basically like a tequila sunrise, only it was all fruit juices with pineapple juice, mango juice, Chinola, which is a passion fruit liqueur, and Milagro tequila. And I'm telling you, with 300 people in the room, and people could not stop coming back and tasting this drink. And Joe can attest to that. He was there.
Sounds like I should make that on our Friday Night Audit drinking show. Friday nights at 5 o'clock, right on the channel you're watching now. Joe, you want to attest to it?
Yeah, we'll join in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that drink was the hit of the show. It was good. And we have a brand ambassador. His name is Nelson Lemus. I'll give him the credit for it. He just knows his stuff. And he made this drink and batch cocktailed it, because we was going to serve 300 people. And I'm telling you, Glenn, just people absolutely raved about it and kept coming back.
Yeah.
I think, David, too, what's important when you talk about cocktails like that is what you're mixing it with. The ingredients and the quality of the ingredient really make a big difference. Yeah. And the same is true with food. Obviously, it's not going to get better than the raw ingredient. So I think that's something that a lot of operators may overlook. Is the quality of the juices and the mixers and the ice and the everything, the glassware. I mean, again, getting back to bars and in the catering setting is using at least, a certain amount of proper glassware. You can't do every glass, but you shouldn't serve everything in one glass. It makes a big difference.
Yeah, there's no such thing as a universal glass. I'm sorry.
I don't believe in it. I really don't.
That's fine
yeah.
for water.
Except I take umbrage with that. There is the red Solo cup. So
oh yeah, there you go. But I mean, I've been at catered events where you want a bourbon on the rocks and you get it in a stemmed wine glass.
So let's test your knowledge, Glenn.
It happens.
Hold on, I got to react to this first. It won't even taste right.
Exactly.
It's like when you think you're having water, but you drink orange juice. It's just not going to be right.
I put it down. I can't do it.
All right, David, sorry.
So Glenn, you talk about the red Solo cup.
Yeah.
Do you know that the red Solo cup is actually measured?
I do, with the little notches and stuff like
ridges
that.
And notches. Not too many people know that.
I only know that from watching more than enough YouTube videos.
Right. Well, they just listened to Toby Keith's, red Solo cup.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I haven't listened to country music since Garth Brooks was popular because it went in a direction that I'm not comfortable with. I like old school country music.
I'm a Glenn Campbell fan. So.
Yeah, I love that stuff. I loved all of that stuff. I just don't connect with modern country music. I'm sorry, everybody. I'm sorry.
Andrea Emma Robinson did a wine tasting, and Anthony knows her well. And she did a wine tasting. We did it we had 6 wine. Actually, we had 6 flights, 12 wines, 2 for each flight.
Yep.
And we were doing a comparison and tasting wines and stuff.
Yep.
And the tasting was done, and I raised my hand, and she goes, "Okay, what, David?" I said, "Wine number 2, they're the same wines." She goes, "You got me. You got me." And we went through the whole tasting, and at the end, each wine in each flight were the same.
Wow.
What was different was the glassware.
Yeah.
And it was the taste panel for Riddle glasses, and how to stack a deck when you're doing a tasting with your customer. Let him use his universal wine glass.
Yep.
You come and you pull out your Riddle glasses and you pour your wine in there. It's going to show better all the time. So to Joe's point, there's no such thing as a universal glass.
Wow, that's pretty wild. But Joe, back to the catering side, when you're dealing with multiple types of glasses and stuff like that, that's got to be complicated for the operator to have lots of different glasses and stuff like that. Any tips on how to maximize that opportunity without adding too many layers of work to people?
Yeah, I think you need to cover the basics. You need a rock glass, you need a wine glass, you need you need a tall glass for mixed drinks, that type of thing. You don't have to go too extreme, but you need at least 4 varieties of glassware. The key there is having the right racks and having the right system in place so you can store them properly and you don't have tremendous breakage. When I think of glassware, I think of the New York Wine Experience, which we did at the Marquee. And it's still there. The first one we did was probably 1986.
Wow.
With Marvin Shankin and Kevin Wer'e. And I mean, we did thousands.
But Marvin Shankin, didn't he do Wine Enthusiast? Is that who that was?
Yeah, it was the Wine Spectator.
Wine Spectator. Sorry, my apologies.
And then he
Adam is
did,
Wine Enthusiast.
All right, sorry.
Yeah. And then he did Market Watch, which was an industry beverage. And then he did Cigar Aficionado. So we did the Big Smoke. But
yes. Oh my God.
we did.
I went to one of those with the Big Smoke because I worked with I was working with this woman, Manuela, whose husband was into the cigar scene, and he wrote for that magazine. And I think I got to go to one of those back in the day. That was great.
Yeah,
I think you could smoke indoors back then.
Yeah, that was written into the law when the smoking law changed. They were allowed to do that event, so we continued doing it at the Marquee for many, many years. Now he's moved it on to other cities, but the wine experience, we would do 1,000 people schoolroom style, and a different. There would be 12 glasses per person at one time.
Wow!
And go in, pick those up, wash those while they were having lunch with another 10,000 glasses. So wow, it was a huge undertaking.
We used to have a contest, Glenn, where Joe had the people in teams, and I donated T-shirts.
Yeah.
Everybody had one team they all had different T-shirts on and stuff to put them in teams to do this event. It was a sight to see, I got to tell you.
That's hysterical. I think we're on the cusp of having Anthony come back, but before he does, I got to ask you where y'all stand on sake. I think it's the best alcohol. I love it. Makes me super happy. Burns off real easy, but I haven't seen it hit mainstream out of sake bars and Japanese restaurants.
It is. It's there. It's part of an ingredient. There's some great sake cocktails right now.
Yep.
With vodka. With a number of products. So it's absolutely there. Will it ever be mainstream like that? No. But it's a wonderful product, and it's very, very mixable.
What sake should I go to the store and buy right after this? Do you happen to know of one you could recommend?
Off the top of my head, there's so many different sakes out there.
I'm confused with the sake brands like I am with classical music. I know it's good. I just can't identify what it is.
Well, they're degrees of good. That's all.
Yeah.
Now there are sochus and sojus, and there's so many things that are out there.
The unfiltered. I know it's
oh my God,
pretty wild. Anthony, how are we doing over there?
How about now? Let's try this one more time.
It's the best you sounded all week.
Would you take a plane ride to Florida?
I know.
I did.
Florida. I think he's in Hawaii.
It seems my entire system just blew up. So I had to just figure it out. But anyway, the question I have is why it's still going in and out or no? We're good. Okay. So
we're great.
One of the things that I'm always interested in, you may have talked about it before. There's only two companies in New York that can provide liquor to establishments, right? And one can only provide a certain liquor and the other one can only provide a certain liquor. Is that correct or is that incorrect?
Well, it's an exclusive market. So if you carry a brand in New York, you're the only one that carries it. We're in an exclusive market.
Right.
Why is that?
At one time, Anthony, there was a fraternal organization called the 50 Club. And what the 50 Club represented was there were 50 wholesale distributors in the marketplace. And right now, it's the big three. There's Southern Glazer Wine and Spirits.
Which is basically exclusive in Las Vegas, too, right?
No, because Republic National Distributing Company, RNDC, is there also. And so is Breakthrough Beverage. Mm-hmm. There's Southern Glazer Wine and Spirits. There is Breakthrough Beverage Group. And then there's RNDC, which just became partners with the Opici family. And they've moved into New York as well, too. They're learning about unions and cost of labor and things like that.
Listen, my favorite thing in the world is to see somebody learn about unions in New York. It's kind of like somebody learning about you. And listen, I love unions. I love unions in New York. I love Local 6. Nothing against them. All I'm saying is a 13-year-old teenager and a 23-year-old person is different. So the 13-year-old teenager thinks they know everything. Right. 10 years of growing up, they say, oh, I have some perspective now. That's what it takes you. It's like when you come into the market, you're a 13-year-old teenager that thinks you know everything. And then you come into the New York market and then you're like, oh, thank you for this lesson.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because, Joe, when he opened up the Marquee, how the heck did they ever keep the union out of that hotel for as long as they did?
That's a great question.
The biggest hotel in New York City, and they weren't union.
And right, and then currently they now are. So how did you do that?
Well, the process was a very pro employee focus with peer review, and there was a lot of interaction and a lot of communication right from pre-opening through the first many years we were open, and it created a lot of trust and a lot of positive reinforcement, and it worked. Now it is. I believe it's a different scenario now. With they have a third-party food and beverage operator in the hotel, and yes. I believe the housekeeping part changed.
And when I heard they had third-party operator, they have a great operator. But when I heard they had a third-party operator, that's like saying we're going to have a third-party astronaut. It's like what?
Anthony, never in my wildest imagination did I ever think that hotel would farm out their food and beverage.
Never in a trillion years.
120 million in their heyday, and I'm still scratching my head.
You can't make it. Listen, I know a lot of hotels, and you guys do too, and I won't name them. And that in New York City before COVID were having problems, and they were making top line revenue they've never seen before.
Right.
Best revenue they've ever made, and they couldn't make a profit. So when COVID happened, everybody said, "Oh, COVID killed them." No, COVID didn't kill them. They just had too many expenses, and they're working in an environment that wasn't sustainable. And that was the problem. And some of them, I think, are kind of trying to make a comeback. I know another small hotel, which we name nameless, I can talk about in the green screen, that transformed their food and beverage, and now they have like one unit, and everybody kind of shares jobs and works in one unit. But that was years of negotiation with the union. And listen, I think the union is important. But people got to make money to keep these jobs alive, and we saw that in COVID. There's nothing we can do. If we don't have work, we can't employ people.
Exactly.
Listen, when Local 6 would negotiate all the time, and Peter Ward was in charge, you could hear the people saying, Peter, this is great. We appreciate you protecting your union members. But at some point, if the hotel doesn't make money, how are we going to pay them? What good is it if we have to close our doors because we can't afford it? What is it, Joe? 86 cents out of every dollar goes.
Yeah, but on the other flip side of that, being in the business long term, we all know, especially me operating hotels, I've seen some crappy things done to employees and unfair labor practices. I've seen it with my own eyes, and I've threatened to quit over them, and they changed their practices. When I was a young general manager, I walked out. I said, I'm not doing that. And so I saw some discrimination that, again, I won't talk about. So unions are vital to some. When you don't have a hotel that's functioning well, that means the employees are going to get hurt. So most owners I know do a great job, but the unions are there to protect the employees. But there's got to be fair and equitable practices on both sides. And if you're a general manager that walks into a property and is allowed to be controlled by whether it be the unions or the ownership or the management, it's a problem. You have to be a free thinker that knows the contract and wants to, with a big heart, take care of their employees. That's the only thing that works in New York City. Know the contract, take care of your employees, love your employees, and the 2 or 3 people that are always a pain in the ass are always going to be a pain in the ass. But don't blame the 99% of employees that are great.
I agree. I think that's very well said. I think that's the way to approach it. Absolutely.
Yeah, no question about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So where are we right now with catered events and things coming back? Before we were going online, we were talking about the state of these big box hotels and all of that kind of stuff. We had on Dan Lesser last week of LW Hotel Advisors, and he's saying, put your money down on big budget urban hotels. That's from an investment point of view. How do you guys see it from an operations and profitability point of view, Joe?
Well, I definitely am optimistic. I think, the way the business came back, obviously luxury came back quicker.
Right.
Leisure travel came back faster. Obviously, a lot of the southern states, Florida, Texas, came back sooner. So it was very regionalized the way the recovery happened. And all the research I've done and everything that I've read and seen is that there's such a pent-up demand now for people to get together, not necessarily for content. Yep. Content can be done in different formats, whether it's hybrid or live. There's such a demand that the smaller, simpler meetings are definitely happening. And now you're starting to see larger events happening at the big cities like New York, and they've got to do that rotation, whether they move around the country. So I'm optimistic about it. I think the big properties with a lot of event space and hotels and services are going to do just fine. I really see that turning around. Now, having said that, expectations are higher and events need to be better. And they need to be more engaging because people don't want to travel and do that and be disappointed. So everybody's got to up their game and really take the day of an 8-hour meeting with two 15-minute coffee breaks and a 45-minute lunch are over. You need to allow time to network, to reconnect and feel like you belong to something. So I think that's
Anthony,
happening.
you muted.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to a lot of my friends that work in like the Florida region, and they're busy. I mean, big groups are coming
No,
back.
we know that. Yeah.
Florida,
And I think New York is going to happen. You can't not come to New York.
Yeah.
You
I
got
was
to
just talking to a friend of mine that owns a hotel in Florida, and he's like, I wish I invested more of my part in this hotel in Florida because they're doing amazing. But I just saw something at the Resorts World when we were at Forbes, and
In Las Vegas.
They did the breakout section or session, I should say, and there were like 4 or 5 different sections with the same food. It was never a line. There were small sections, and there was free flow. And I bumped into a lot more people that way than standing behind somebody. And I was like, oh, okay, I don't know if I should go approach that person because I don't want to bother them when they're about to eat. But when you're flowing that way, we were bumping into each other, and it was so organic. It was beautiful. It was like, I was like, wow, I never realized that could really change the dynamic of the conference. It was interesting.
Well, food and beverage, I'm a firm believer food and beverage is critical to the success of a conference. And now, to your point, it needs to be interactive. It needs to be immersive. It's such a great opportunity for creativity and making that difference in large events. Again, the properties that do that are going to really reap the benefits.
And I would be 1 second, Glenn. I would be remiss if I didn't say this. The short ribs at the Forbes event at Resorts World were insane. The best thing I've ever had at any sit-down meal conference in my life. They were insane.
You need to have
one
my
of the
short
best
rib
banquet. It's one of the best banquet items because when it's good, it's great, and you don't have to worry about medium rare and overcooking. It's a fantastic item, and I love it. I think it's more flavorful than a fillet. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, that's interesting. Anyway, what I was going to say, the moment is past. But before we wrap up, Joe, I was thinking you were saying interactive. The most interactive I see with food and beverage is I got to make my own tacos or something like that, right? What do you really mean by that? And could you give us a good, solid example of how people could up their catering game through that?
It's not a new idea, but I think it's something that can be done better and more. On a regular basis is chefs out front and having culinary. We've all seen that. Again, sometimes it's not executed correctly, but when it is done correctly, and there's David mentioned before doing stations where you have maybe you're carving a fillet or a tenderloin, and right next to it you have a nice wine pairing. And you're blending, you're doing a wine with that item, and then you go over and you're doing the crab cakes, and maybe you're doing, a nice a Sauvignon Blanc or something. So all of those types of things can be interactive, educational, and
sushi and sake station, Glenn.
Yeah, you can do a sake.
Right now, actually, at the lodging conference last year, there's the only place that had alcohol next to it. They had a sushi station. Thank you, Harry Javer. And next to it, they had a sake thing.
Yeah,
which
is great. I just stayed there all night. It was
there you go.
So one of the things I want to talk about before we break up, and
really? I thought this was really working out.
How food and beverage and alcohol from a marketing standpoint. And was it Joe or David that was involved with the martini?
David.
So David, a lot of people forgot, but I worked with Quinn & Co. PR, and Carla Cacavalli was my PR person. And we needed to reposition the hotel. We were just reopening, and nobody knew about the Algonquin. It was the hotel 50 years ago, but it was a problem. And for the investors, it was a big problem. So we needed one to get great people, which we did, and we worked with the union. The union employees at the Algonquin Hotel are second to none. The best. I go in there, I love them. We hug, we kiss. But we needed an idea to get press. So do you remember how big, and talk about what I'm talking about so I don't seem like I'm self-serving here, as far as the martini?
As far as the marquee goes?
No, the martini, the $10,000 martini.
Oh, the $10,000 martini. Well, we came in and, like I said, I was always looking to come up with some sort of marketing idea, to do something. We're always charged with building brands in our business. Okay. And, Bacardi just came off spending, 2 point some odd billion dollars, which is probably 10 billion in today's marketplace, to buy Bacardi from Sidney Frank. So I knew I had budget dollars to spend, in the hotel marketplace. And when I came upon that, I saw about what is it? Talk to Jeff and Raul. What is it that we could do? And he said, well, we have this $10,000 martini, and it's a diamond ring, and all this stuff. And I said, okay, so maybe I can get one of the brands to come up with some money and support it and sponsor it. And it was a natural. Bacardi was absolutely delighted and more than happy to put their image on that brand.
How big was the martini? How big did it get?
It was. We had a lot of press about it. It was all in the papers, in the Times. There were articles about it. It had a lot of traction, and Bacardi took their PR company and ran with this. They're very, very brand conscious and image conscious about stuff like that. And nobody ever thought
it worked at the right time with the right branding, with the right people.
That is correct. Nobody ever thought that Algonquin would be the hotel to do this.
It was the number one marketing plan, and it still may be in the hotel business as
and
New York
Blue Bar, because
New York Times,
the blue Grey Goose. I mean, it sounds trite and silly, but it all works.
Yeah,
it really worked. At the time, I didn't know you were the brainstorm behind it, but I found out afterwards.
Yeah, it was actually it was Quinn and Co. It was Carla Cacavalli. It was me. But the interesting part about that is you helped us out. So because we didn't have any budget, they came up with the idea and I pushed the idea. We were having challenges and I just said we're having creative differences and I pushed them. And as a general manager, one of the things that you cannot do is sit and just take what comes at you. If it doesn't feel right, it's not right. And we went through many, I won't tell you all the blood and gore, but let's just say my reputation as being difficult to deal with was at a height. And but I pushed them and they pushed back and they came up with the greatest idea and we won the biggest award and they won the biggest award. Who won the award the year before? To tell you how big it was, we won the same award as What Happens in Vegas Stays in Vegas.
Right. Oh, okay. Wow. There you go.
So we were the only independent hotel to this day, to ever win the award. Convention centers, Marriotts, Hiltons, cruise ships win them. No independent hotel. It was a crazy general manager with a crazy PR team with an owner that fully backed me up. I'll tell you a quick story, Glenn. I know we got to go. Quick story. When I went up, I called the owner, Mr. Miller. I said, Mr. Miller, we have this great idea. I already gave the PR company a standing ovation. It's going to be great. Trust me. And he goes, it's the $1,000 martini. And he said, no, the $10,000 martini. I was like, you sure? He goes, yes. I said, okay, great. So because the owner was so supportive, because the PR company, because you were so supportive, and because I'm half out of my mind, it worked. But it can't work. Like when people say, Anthony, you did this, I always make sure that I say I was a percentage of it, of course, because I was crazy and I pushed, but I don't come up with any of these crazy ideas or these creative ideas. I just know talent and I push and I push and I push until it feels right. And
we were happy to be part of it. Believe me, it was a huge feather in my cap.
Right. But what's really important is general managers and people in your position is that they got to push each other for the best, not just try to always placate each other and be nice. Being nice is important, but winning is important because you have an hotel that was in trouble. That's
Anthony, it's funny to real quick. Joe and I talked about that all the time. We always challenged each other. I challenged him because I needed an event. I needed something out of the box, different, crazy. Joe would come to his team and go, I'm being challenged by a liquor supplier, one of our partners, and we got to come up with different things. And when you have two people that synergistically work together to challenge each other that way, you come up with those kinds of ideas. So brilliant.
So true.
Excellent. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. Joe,
Thanks
David,
for having us.
Yeah.
Pleasure. It was
I
great.
look forward to meeting you in person, Joe. And David, I'll see you soon at the next.
Joe, he'll be at the event May 2nd.
Oh, great. You want to plug it real quick, our event?
Well, May 2nd, we have our Long Island Hospitality Association are what's the name
Sip
again?
and Savor.
Yeah, Sip and Savor. And we're going to have stations. We're going to be at the barn at Obeth Page Restoration Village. And the money really is for scholarship. This is our fundraising event, which raises money for scholarships for Nassau Community College, where I teach international beverage, for Suffolk Community, St. Joe's. And we just put money back into the advancement and the education of the students in the hospitality business. So May 2nd, mark your calendars, more to come.
Yeah, and I look forward to giving some money for scholarships and putting some good Long Island food and beverage in my belly as well.
Make sure we have sushi and sake, Glenn, just for you.
I love it. Gentlemen, once again, thanks so much for being here. We'll see you again on another time. Appreciate you. Anthony, let's get out of here. So just remember, everybody, hey, find your podcasts on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, SoundCloud, wherever you get your audio shows. We are there. And if you want to watch us, find us on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. And of course, all shows are housed at novacancynews.com. He's at Anthony Hotels. I'm at Traveling Glenn. Any final words, my friend?
No, sir. I thank you for just being you.
Oh, and I thank you for being you. Stick around for tomorrow. President and CEO of Best Western, Larry Kukolik, is going to be joining us. You won't want to miss that one. And until then, remember, you've got one life, so blaze on and
Be kind to yourself.
see you.